The sharp crunch of gravel beneath my truck tires was the only sound I wanted to hear that evening as I made my way toward my lakeside cabin. After weeks buried in city noise, paperwork, and boardroom politics, I craved the kind of silence only the forest could give me. That silence was mine. I had earned it. The cabin wasn't just a hideaway. It was my fortress, my inheritance, and the one place that reminded me why I'd chosen a life far removed from neighborhoods, suburban gossip, and homeowners associations. Unfortunately, the universe, or rather, the local HOA, had other plans. As I turned the last bend and rolled toward my private gate, the air hit me with something out of place. The stench of fresh asphalt sealant mixed with a faint chemical tang of industrial adhesive. My headlights caught it before my brain even processed what I was seeing. MY Gate, my heavy, cedarwood, custom-made gate that marked the boundary of my property, had been sealed shut. Black tar-like material lined the hinges, smeared across the metal joints. A large HOA-issued sticker stretched across the bars like a victory flag. The words punched me in the gut harder than any fist could. I slammed the truck into park, climbed out, and stalked toward the gate. My boots stuck slightly against the black gunk. I ran my hand across the mess, then looked at my fingers, sticky, with industrial sealant. My temper simmered, but it wasn't just anger, it was insult. Who the hell do they think they are? I muttered under my breath. The local homeowners association had been a thorn in my side for years. Ever since I bought the cabin on the edge of Lake Redfern, they tried to claim I was within their jurisdiction. They wanted fees, compliance with their endless rules, no boats longer than 12 feet, no outdoor fires after sunset, no construction without prior approval. But the kicker was this: my land wasn't in their domain. It was older, exempt, and came with deeds so ironclad they could cut steel. The one thing that truly set my property apart was the bridge. The only way in or out of this part of the valley was over a long, arched, steel and concrete bridge that had been built more than a century ago by the lumber barons. When they sold the land, they sold the bridge with it. My grandfather had owned it, my father after him, and now me, which meant one thing. The HOA had just declared war on the woman who controlled their only way home. I tugged at the gate, testing it. Solid, unmoving, locked tight by their sabotage. My cabin was just a few hundred yards past it, hidden in the trees. My food, my gear, my sanctuary, all of it, blocked by smug suburban vigilantes who thought their bylaws were the law of the land. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the number I never thought I'd have to use outside of emergencies. Officer Daniels, a deputy with the county sheriff's office and an old friend of my father's. He answered on the second ring. "Evening, Rebecca," he said, voice gravelly and tired. "What's wrong?" "They sealed my damn gate," I snapped. "The HOA. They glued it shut like children vandalizing lockers." Silence stretched for a moment on the line before he let out a low whistle. "You serious?" "As a heart attack." "I told them to back off," Daniels muttered. "But they've been getting bold lately. What do you want me to do?" I looked at the bridge looming in the distance, its steel trusses glowing faintly in the moonlight. I could almost hear the HOA's laughter echoing in their sterile meeting halls, thinking they'd finally force me to bend. "I don't want you to do anything," I said. "Not yet. Just be ready when I make the first move." The next morning, I woke up on a cot inside the back of my truck. I hadn't wanted to drive all the way back to town after my discovery, so I camped right there at the blocked gate, waiting for the HOA to show its face. And they did, bright and early, like roaches scuttling into the light. A black SUV rolled up, spotless and smug. Out stepped Karen Whitfield, the president of the HOA, flanked by two men in golf polos who looked like they hadn't worked a real day in their lives. "Rebecca," Karen sang my name like she was the queen addressing a servant. "We've given you plenty of warnings." I crossed my arms. "Karen, you've given me plenty of paper that means nothing. You don't own me, and you sure as hell don't own this land." She smiled, all plastic and venom. "This cabin sits within our community boundaries. By ignoring our requests, you've left us no choice. Until you comply with HOA standards and pay the back dues, your access is suspended." "Suspended?" I barked a laugh. "This isn't a gym membership. This is my property." Karen tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Not if you can't reach it." Her little minions chuckled behind her. I stepped closer, letting my shadow fall across her polished flats. "You sealed my gate," I said, voice low. You vandalized private property. That's a crime. Karen's smile never wavered. Go ahead. Call the sheriff. See how far you get when the entire neighborhood is against you. The neighborhood doesn't own the bridge, Karen. Her smirk faltered. Just for a moment. But I saw it. The flicker of doubt. The reminder of the one truth she couldn't touch. I straightened, pointing past her toward the arched steel structure. That bridge is mine. Every car that drives across it, every delivery truck, every landscaper, every HOA meeting attendee, you all cross my property. You want to play games with gates? Fine. Let's see how you like it when I lock mine. The color drained from her face, and the chuckles behind her died in their throats. You wouldn't, she whispered. Try me. And with that, I walked back to my truck, pulled a heavy steel chain from the toolbox, and started toward the bridge. The sound of the chain clanking against the trusses echoed across the valley as I secured it tight, looping it around the central support beams and snapping a padlock shut. I stood back, hands on my hips, as the HOA entourage watched in horror. Karen's face twisted, first in disbelief, then fury. You can't do this. I already did. This is extortion, she screeched. No, I said calmly. This is property rights. Something you clearly don't understand. The SUVs lined up behind her honked impatiently, residents realizing they couldn't leave without crossing the bridge. A delivery truck pulled up, its driver confused. The line grew longer by the minute, a miniature traffic jam in the middle of nowhere, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in every battle with the HOA. Power. Real, undeniable power. That morning was just the beginning. The HOA had declared war by sealing my cabin gate. But what they didn't realize was that I held the ultimate trump card. I wasn't just fighting for a cabin. I was fighting for every inch of freedom that bridge represented, and I intended to win. The first 24 hours after I locked the bridge were pure chaos. The line of cars stacked up faster than ants at a picnic. Some honked impatiently, others idled with angry drivers glaring at me like I'd ruined their entire lives. A few tried to sweet-talk me, shouting out their windows about needing to get to work, to school, to a doctor's appointment, but I didn't budge. I leaned against my truck with arms crossed, sunglasses shielding my eyes, and a calm expression that I knew infuriated them more than yelling ever could. Karen Whitfield, the self-proclaimed queen bee of the HOA, hovered near the chain like a rabid wasp. Her phone was glued to her ear, pacing, shouting at whoever was on the other end. Judging by the pitch of her voice, she was cycling through lawyers, board members, maybe even county officials. But every time her eyes flicked to me, she saw it written all over my face. You don't scare me. Finally, she marched toward me, heels clicking against the concrete. This is unlawful imprisonment, she shouted, loud enough for the crowd to hear. You're holding. I pushed off the truck and faced her squarely. No one ICE imprisoned, Karen. They're free to leave anytime, just not across my bridge. Her nostrils flared. You don't own this bridge. Oh, but I do, I said, pulling a folded document from my back pocket. It was a copy of the deed, laminated for moments just like this. I snapped it open, showing the crisp lettering, the county seal, and the Whitmore family name mine. This bridge has been in my family for 3 generations. Every title, every plat map, every boundary line says the same thing. This structure and the land it rests on belong to me. She snatched at it, but I pulled it back before her manicured nails could touch. Nice try, I smirked. The crowd buzzed with whispers. Some neighbors who had previously glared at me now shifted uncomfortably, realizing that maybe, just maybe, the HOA wasn't on the right side of this fight. Even if you own it, Karen snapped, it's an easement. Public right-of-way. You can't just cut people off from their homes. I raised a brow. Funny you should bring up easements, Karen. Because the easement only applies as long as I'm not obstructed from enjoying my property. And you? You sealed my gate. That means the easement is null until I have full access to my land again. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. She looked like a fish gasping for air. The residents in their cars grew restless, some demanding answers from Karen now. Why'd you seal her gate, Karen? One man shouted. Yeah, I've got groceries melting in my trunk, a woman added. Is this even legal? Another muttered. For the first time, Karen wasn't holding all the cards. And I savored it. BY late afternoon. A deputy sheriff's cruiser pulled up. My old friend Officer Daniel stepped out, hands resting on his belt, eyes already tired from the mess he knew he was walking into. "Rebecca," he greeted me with a nod. "Karen." Karen nearly sprinted toward him, like he was the cavalry. "Thank God you're here. She's holding the entire community hostage. Arrest her immediately." Daniels gave me a look, the kind only someone who'd known me since childhood could give. It said, "What the hell did you do now?" "I locked my bridge," I said simply. "She admits it." Karen shrieked. "You have to, Karen." Daniels cut her off, his tone flat as a chalkboard. "I'll handle this." He walked over, lowering his voice as he joined me near the truck. "You sure you want to start this kind of firestorm?" "They started it when they sealed my gate," I replied. "That's vandalism, trespassing, and harassment rolled into one. I'm not playing games anymore." Daniels scratched his jaw. "Technically, she's not wrong," he said loud enough for Karen to hear. "Bridge is hers. I've seen the paperwork myself." Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." Daniels shrugged. "Unless you can prove otherwise, I can't force her to open it. Civil matter, not criminal." The look on Karen's face was priceless, like she'd bitten into a lemon wrapped in sandpaper. But the residents," she stammered. "They can't get out." Daniels turned to the crowd. "Folks, you're free to call your own lawyers. But until then, I suggest you take it up with your HOA board. This is between them and Rebecca." I almost laughed at how fast Karen's supporters turned on her. Angry voices rose, fingers pointed, people demanded refunds for their HOA dues. For once, their pitchforks weren't aimed at me. Karen stormed off in a huff, barking into her phone again. The caravan of cars eventually dispersed, people resigning themselves to waiting it out. And me? I sat on the bridge railing as the sun dipped below the trees, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years that night, though I knew it was far from over. Karen wasn't the type to slink away defeated. She was a rattlesnake. Wounded pride only made her bite harder. I could already imagine the HOA's next moves, lawsuits, threats, maybe even underhanded sabotage. So I made my own moves. First, I installed cameras, high-resolution, motion sensor, infrared, along the length of the bridge and at the sealed gate. No one was sneaking around without me knowing. Second, I dug out the stack of documents my father had kept locked away. Not just the deed, but surveyor maps, easement agreements, tax receipts, and a court ruling from the 1970s when the county had already tried to claim the bridge as public. The judge at the time had ruled firmly in my family's favor. Ironclad. Untouchable. Third, I made a few phone calls of my own to the county assessor's office, to a local newspaper reporter who owed me a favor, and to a real estate lawyer named Michael Tate, who had a reputation for dismantling HOAs like a butcher with a cleaver. If Karen wanted war, she was going to get scorched earth. The next morning, I woke to the sound of hammering. I rushed out of my cabin and followed the noise toward the bridge. What I found nearly made my blood boil. A group of HOA volunteers, led by Karen herself, were erecting a crude wooden platform at the edge of the bridge. They had signs, banners, even a bullhorn. "Community blockade," Karen declared proudly when she saw me. "If you won't open the bridge, we'll hold it ourselves. No one gets through until you comply." I laughed. I couldn't help it. A sharp, biting laugh that echoed over the water. "Karen, you really don't get it, do you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Enlighten me." "You're staging a protest on my property, which means every single one of you is trespassing." The volunteers hesitated, glancing at each other nervously. I pulled out my phone and waved it. "See this? It's live streaming. To the county sheriff's office. Evidence of criminal trespass in real time." Karen's smug expression cracked. She hissed something to her volunteers, and half of them scattered like pigeons. The rest lingered, unsure whether to side with her or with common sense. "Mark my words, Rebecca," Karen spat. "You'll regret this." I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "No, Karen. You're the one who's about to regret it. Because you picked a fight with the one person in this valley who holds the keys to your entire world." Her eyes flicked toward the chain, the padlock, the steel structure looming behind me. For the first time I saw fear, not just anger, not just pride. Real, bone-deep fear, and it told me everything I needed to know. The HOA had underestimated me, and now I had them exactly where I wanted them. The third day dawned foggy and heavy, the kind of morning where the mist clung to the bridge like a ghost refusing to move on. I stood with a mug of black coffee in hand, watching the water ripple beneath the steel beams. It should have been peaceful. It should have been my escape from the world, but instead, it was a battlefield and I didn't need a crystal ball to know what the HOA would try next. When intimidation failed, they'd always turn to paperwork. The HOA's greatest weapon wasn't muscle, it was bureaucracy, and sure enough, by mid-morning, a manila envelope arrived, couriered by some poor delivery guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The header was bold, all caps, and designed to terrify. The HOA claimed I was obstructing an easement, creating a public nuisance, and endangering residents by denying emergency access. They demanded I remove the chain and padlock, or face immediate litigation. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. I dialed my lawyer, Michael Tate. They finally pulled a lawsuit card, I said when he picked up. I'd be disappointed if they hadn't, he replied smoothly. Send me the paperwork. I'll have fun tearing it apart. I snapped a photo of every page and sent them over. Within an hour, Michael called me back, chuckling. They don't have a case, he said. The easement clause specifically excludes scenarios where the dominant estate, you, are denied access to your property. By sealing your gate, they voided their right of passage. If they take this to court, they'll lose. Badly. Exactly what I wanted to hear, I said, grinning. Michael paused. But Rebecca, you need to understand. HOA boards don't like losing. If they realize they can't win legally, they may get creative. I knew what he meant. Karen wasn't about to slink into the shadows. She'd claw, scrape, and bite until she got her way. And people like that could be dangerous when cornered. I'm ready for them, I said. By the afternoon, word of the bridge standoff had spread far beyond the valley. The local newspaper ran a story. Bridge owner battles HOA over property rights. Online forums picked it up, and within hours I had strangers sending me messages of support. Property owners from across the country cheered me on, telling me horror stories of their own HOA nightmares. The attention rattled the HOA. Karen showed up again, this time flanked not by polo shirt volunteers, but by a slick man in a suit. He introduced himself as Gregory Dunn, HOA legal counsel. Ms. Whitmore, he said smoothly, extending a hand I refused to shake. We'd like to resolve this matter amicably. I smirked. That's funny. Last I checked, amicable people don't glue their neighbor's gate shut. His smile faltered, just for a second, before he composed himself. That was unfortunate. Miscommunication. We're prepared to overlook certain misunderstandings if you'll simply restore access. In other words, I said, you want me to back down? Gregory cleared his throat. Think of the residents. Families, children, elderly people. What if an ambulance needs to cross that bridge? Do you want their lives on your conscience? I stepped closer, lowering my voice, so he knew I meant every word. You don't get to guilt me when your client was the one who endangered lives by blocking my property first. If emergency access is such a concern, maybe the HOA president shouldn't play petty games with tar and padlocks. Karen's face turned red as the crowd of curious neighbors listened in. I saw heads nodding, whispers passing. The tide of opinion was shifting, slowly but surely. Gregory adjusted his tie. We'll see you in court. Can't wait, I said, flashing him a smile sharp enough to cut glass. That night, I set extra precautions. Cameras were one thing, but I knew Karen's type. If she couldn't win in daylight, she'd strike in the dark. I parked my truck sideways across the bridge entrance, chained the wheels to the beams, and kept a shotgun propped against the porch door of my cabin. Not because I wanted violence, but because people who feel powerless are the most dangerous. Around midnight, the first attempt came. I heard it before I saw it. The low growl of an engine creeping down the road. I grabbed a flashlight and slipped out silently. A dark pickup idled near the chain, two figures jumping out with bolt cutters in hand. Amateurs. I clicked on the flashlight, beam blinding them. Evening boys. They froze. One dropped the cutters with a clatter. This is private property, I said coldly. Step away from the chain. We were just, the taller one stammered. Just committing a felony? I snapped. Smile for the camera. Sheriff's office will love this footage. They scrambled back into their truck and peeled off, tires squealing. I stood there until the sound faded into the night, heart pounding but steady. Karen was getting desperate, and desperation makes people sloppy. The following morning, the fallout was immediate. I sent the footage to Officer Daniels, who called me within an hour. 2 HOA volunteers, he confirmed, claimed they were just trying to help the community. I gave them a warning this time, but if they step foot near your bridge again, they'll be charged. Good, I said. Let them know I don't play games. Daniels sighed. Rebecca, you're winning this battle, but Karen won't stop until she either crushes you or gets crushed herself. Be careful. I appreciated the warning, but careful wasn't my style. Strategic was SO. I made my boldest move yet. That evening, I held a town meeting. On the bridge itself, I sent notices to every resident, bypassing the HOA entirely. When they showed up, confused but curious, I stood on the steel trusses with a megaphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. You've been misled. Your HOA wants you to believe I'm the villain here. But the truth is, I'm protecting what's mine, and by extension, your access too. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I held up the deed. This bridge is privately owned. Always has been. The county recognizes it. The courts recognize it. And your HOA recognizes it, even if they won't admit it. Karen tried to interrupt, shouting about bylaws and dues, but I raised my voice over hers. When they sealed my gate, they broke the law. They violated property rights. And when I responded by locking the bridge, I was within every legal right to do so. I paused, letting the words sink in. Then I delivered the knockout punch. But here's the good news. I don't want to cut you off. I want peace. If the HOA apologizes, pays for the damage to my gate, and agrees in writing never to harass me again, I'll reopen the bridge immediately. If not, well, I'm prepared to let this drag out as long as it takes. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others argued, but one thing was clear. Karen's grip on the community was slipping. I saw it in their eyes. Doubt, frustration, even betrayal. They'd followed her for years, but now they saw the cracks in her crown. Karen's face was a storm cloud ready to burst. She hissed into her bullhorn, but her words were drowned out by residents demanding answers. For once, I didn't need to fight. The community was doing it for me. That night, under the cover of darkness, Karen made her boldest move yet. I woke to the crackle of flames. Heart racing, I bolted from my cabin and saw it. The wooden blockade she'd built at the bridge's edge was ablaze, fire licking the steel beams. Whether it was an accident or deliberate, I couldn't tell, but I knew Karen's fingerprints were all over it. I grabbed my hose, doused what I could, and called the fire department. By the time they arrived, the blaze was mostly out, but the smoke damage was undeniable. The next morning, county officials came to inspect. And when they learned the fire had started on the HOA's blockade, the narrative shifted completely. Karen wasn't just a nuisance anymore. She was a liability, and liabilities don't stay in power for long. The fire changed everything. For days, smoke still lingered in the air near the bridge, a charred reminder of how far Karen and her HOA were willing to go. County fire inspectors filed their reports, noting the source as suspicious ignition. Neighbors whispered about lawsuits, about safety hazards, about whether their own dues were funding Karen's reckless war. And me. I sat quietly on my porch, waiting. I'd learned long ago that sometimes the best strike was no strike at all, just patience. Because when someone like Karen unraveled, they didn't stop until they tied the noose around their own neck. By the end of the week, my patience paid off. A notice went out to all HOA members. Emergency board meeting. Attendance mandatory. That I wasn't invited, of course. But I didn't need to be. My cameras picked up the steady line of cars streaming toward the community hall. Through open windows, the shouting carried on the night air. Karen endangered us all. She's going to bankrupt the HOA. She doesn't even have the authority to seal someone's gate. The meeting dragged on for hours. And when it was over, Karen stormed out, hair disheveled, face red, muttering curses at anyone who looked her way. The board had voted her out. The queen was dethroned. The new interim president, a soft-spoken man named Robert Miller, came to see me the next morning. He didn't arrive with bodyguards or lawyers. Just a baseball cap in hand and an exhausted smile. Ms. Whitmore, he said, I know we've started off on the wrong foot. On behalf of the board, I'd like to apologize. What Karen did was unacceptable. The fire alone could have cost lives. I studied him carefully. He seemed sincere, but sincerity and politics rarely mixed. "What do you want, Robert?" I asked flatly. He sighed. "To end this. To make peace. We'll pay for your gate repairs. We'll issue a written statement that the HOA has no jurisdiction over your property. And we'll guarantee that no board member ever bothers you again." It was everything I wanted. Almost. "Add one more thing," I said. "A clause that if anyone from the HOA tampers with my property again, you dissolve the entire association." His eyes widened. "That's extreme. So is arson," I replied coldly. Robert hesitated, then nodded. "Done." 2 days later, I stood on the bridge with bolt cutters in hand. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors curious to see if I'd really end the standoff. Cameras were rolling, kids whispered, and people held their breath. I clipped the padlock and pulled the chain free. The sound echoed like a gunshot across the valley. The bridge was open again. A cheer went up, though it wasn't for me. It was for relief, for the end of tension, for the return of normalcy. I didn't need their applause. I hadn't done it for them, that I'd done it for me, for my peace, for my family's legacy, for the principle that no HOA, no matter how powerful, could trample over what was mine. Karen, of course, couldn't let it end quietly. A week later, she tried one last stunt. She filed a personal lawsuit against me for emotional distress and loss of reputation. Her lawyer, the same Gregory Dunn, stood beside her in court, spinning tales of me terrorizing the community, but Michael Tate shredded them. He presented video evidence of the sealed gate, eyewitness testimonies of the fire, and documents proving my ownership of the bridge beyond a shadow of a doubt. The judge didn't just dismiss Karen's lawsuit. He fined her for filing a frivolous claim. Karen left the courthouse in tears. That was the last time I ever saw her. Rumor has it she moved to Florida, trying to join another HOA and relive her glory days. But in our valley, her reign was over months past. Seasons changed. The bridge stood strong, my gate repaired, my cabin quiet once more. Occasionally, a neighbor would wave as they crossed, some even stopping to thank me for standing up to the HOA that I never asked for thanks, that I just wanted freedom. And I had it. Looking back now, I realized something important. The HOA thought they could scare me into compliance, that they could strip away my rights with enough threats and paperwork. But they forgot one thing: property, real property, isn't just about land or gates or bridges. It's about backbone. About knowing what's yours and refusing to let anyone take it. They sealed my gate, thinking,